I ranked every single shiny Pokemon to find the worst ones, then I redesigned their shiny forms and hunted for them in a modded version of Pokémon Sapphire. Here's how it went. I've been shiny hunting for a couple of years now, and while I love it, there are a number of shiny Pokemon that just don't look good. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are over 1,000 Pokemon now, and I know they can't all be bangers, but come on, some of these shinies are just borderline unnoticeable. While some shinies you just can't even tell the difference between, others I think are just underwhelming or don't really match their overall aesthetic. And that gave me an idea. I went live and asked my chat to pick out some of the worst shiny Pokemon from generations 1 through 3. And trust me, there were a lot of them. Considering shiny Pokemon were introduced in Generation 2, the first couple hundred shinies had to be pretty tame considering they were originally featured on hardware created back in 1999. This meant the possibilities for the customization of shiny sprites were super limited, and often color palettes were just shifted a little bit, resulting in a ton of strange green and pink shiny Pokemon. While the colors got slightly better in Generation 3, they were still a long way from the much more polished shiny Pokemon of newer generations. To start off, my chat and I spent about 30 minutes just looking at every single shiny sprite and picking what we thought were the shinies most in need of a redo. But there are a couple of criteria that we wanted to keep in mind for this. 1, is the shiny bad? 2, are we realistically able to make it look any better, or is it just so bad that it's actually beyond repair? And 3, would it be fun to use in a playthrough? While there's some really awful early game shinies, I wanted to build a team of unique Pokemon that would be a lot more fun to use than just suffering through 8 gyms and Elite Four members with a team of level 55 first stage Pokemon that had new shiny forms. So with those 3 measures in mind, it was time to pick our team of awful shiny Pokemon. After our first pass through, we had selected about 15 Pokemon and had slowly begun narrowing them down. It took quite a bit of deliberating, but finally we got our team down to 6. And those lucky 6 were as follows: Natu, Octillery, Regice, Cubone, Gengar, and of course, my mortal enemy, Shiny Dragonite. With the team selected, it's now time to reimagine them. I started by asking my chat what they thought would look good, and based on their suggestions and a bit of my own input, I would get to work. The first thing was usually just selecting the primary color of the Pokemon and slowly changing it to see what different colors would look like. I want to quickly mention too that I was doing this rather quickly on stream, and I know that some of these mockups are a bit rough, but I'll address that and clean them up once I actually add them into the game. But continuing on, I would also adjust some of the secondary colors too. My goal was to make these Pokemon look better, but also choose color schemes that felt like they still fit the overall design of the Pokemon we had selected. This continued on for about an hour, and at the end, we had 6 new and improved shiny Pokemon, but now it was time to get to the real redesign. Hey, real quick, it's Editor James here, and originally this part of the video was going to be an in-depth explanation on how I actually made these sprites within the game code itself, but due to a bunch of recent takedowns surrounding modded Pokemon content, I'm just going to remove this part of the video, and instead it's going to go up over on my Patreon page, which I've linked down in the description. I upload full-length playthroughs of other games and just content that I don't think fits super well on this main channel, so be sure to check it out if you're interested. With that, let's get back to the rest of the video. Starting off the first day, I got through all of the intro tutorials so I could get set up for the first hunt, Cubone. Luckily, the Pokemon at this point are all pretty low level, so the lack of money for Pokeballs isn't a huge deal. But I wanted to get set up for a proper hunt. When I tested the mod offline, it took about 20 minutes using the max speed up available to find a shiny, so I figured it would take a few hours with no speed up at all. I got into the Petalburg Woods, and after confirming that Cubone was in fact there, it was time to get to work. I locked in, prepped for a big hunt, and I got a surprise 5 encounters later. Chat, I played this for 25 minutes on max speed up yesterday before I found a Cubone. 25 minutes on max speed up. And we just found one, and if I factor in the amount of time I walked out of the room, about a minute and a half. While I was both shocked and thrilled to see this Pokemon, this caused my chat and myself to ponder if the odds were perhaps a little too high, and if I should reconsider boosting them so much. But don't worry though, the next hunt reassured me that the odds were in fact not too high. With Cubone now in the party, I could deposit Mudkip into the PC and start tackling the story. I just carried Cubone through some trainer battles to get it to a decent level, and then I headed into the first gym. And even with the untrustworthy accuracy of Bone Club, Cubone was able to solo the gym and take down Roxanne on the first try. With the first gym badge down, it was time to move on to the next gym and the next shiny hunt. While mapping out a bit of this playthrough, I assumed that taking on a Brawly with just Cubone would be a bit annoying, so I decided to add a Pokemon in the Granite Cave to help out. I was concerned that these two hunts were too close together and that there was almost no storyline to serve as a buffer, but considering that I had found Cubone in 2 minutes, I now wasn't so afraid of taking a bit longer on the next hunt. Arriving in Dewford, I headed into the Granite Cave to knock out the only bit of storyline there is. After blindly traversing through the dark, I ended up at Steven, and after delivering the goods, I returned to the main area to begin the next hunt. Natu was the second Pokemon on our list, and this time around, I made it a little less common, giving a huge opportunity to phase with other Pokemon during this hunt. And phase I did. About an hour into this hunt, I found a shiny Zubat. While I couldn't use it, I thought it would be cool to catch to keep track of any other shinies I might find during this challenge. The only problem with that is I tried to damage it and instead knocked it out. I was a little upset, but I didn't think much of it. The game, however, disagreed. I think that knocking out this Zubat caused some kind of curse on my ability to find shiny Natu, because this ended up being the longest shiny hunt in the entire game. But taking a step back, I put about an hour into this hunt before ending stream for the day and deciding to come back on the following day. Starting the game the next day, I noticed a bit of a problem. Due to Cubone's horrific speed stat, it was having a hard time running from battles and often took a decent amount of damage, requiring me to run back and forth to the Pokemon Center every few battles. While this wasn't particularly difficult to do, it was more so annoying, and I had an idea to fix it. I went back to Route 101 and caught a Poochyena with the ability Runaway. Regardless of it being level 2, it could always run from battles without problems. While it wasn't nearly as cool to see in battle as Cubone, it made this hunt so much more efficient. But regardless of this increase in efficiency, I still couldn't find Natu. It was frustrating spending now over 3.5 total hours looking for a 1 in 260 odds shiny, but at the same time, it reaffirmed that the odds were fine and wouldn't be as big of a problem down the line. I was still going to have to work to find these shinies, which was the whole point of the challenge after all. Now on the third day of hunting for shiny Natu, I came back with a bit of a vengeance. I really wanted to find this Pokemon and make some more progress in this challenge. After finding this shiny, I had a ton of story events I could take on, like the May battle, the third gym, and I just wanted to keep that ball rolling. So I got back to work, and finally, about 5.5 hours into this hunt, the curse was lifted and I was freed from the Granite Cave. Both been just... It's been Granite Cave. There it is! Oh my god, it finally shines! Holy chat. Oh my god, that took so long to show up. With Natu finally on the team, it was time to start working on the second gym. While I thought a flying psychic type would have been a secret weapon for this gym, it didn't go quite as I thought. And it turns out that Cubone was the real hero, coming through with back-to-back-to-back critical hits to clutch out the battle. Oh my god, it does not miss! It does not miss! T-Bone! Back-to-back-to-back critical hits? Did not know you had it in you. And with that, I grabbed the second badge and could continue on to the next chunk of story. I made it through Slateport City and took on the events at the Oceanic Museum before moving on to Route 110. While I had decent Pokemon with good stab moves, I hadn't considered the real trouble with choosing Mudkip as my starter. Because of this decision, May had a Grovyle which had super effective moves against both of my Pokemon. Had I chosen Trico in the beginning, I would have fought a Combusken instead, which I could have destroyed with my current team, but alas, I had to deal with the consequences of my own actions. After a while, it became clear that my current strategy wasn't going to work, and I might need to adjust course. I couldn't add anything to the team because my next hunt was blocked by, you guessed it, the May battle. While I had neglected it up to this point because it's technically a set damage move, Nightshade was my most powerful move on Natu, and it felt like it was time to use it in order to just get past this battle. This turned out to be the right call as I got through the battle only a couple of minutes later, and I was finally able to move on to Mauville. Once I got there, I knew the next battle was absolutely free. Not only did I get to steamroll Wally and embarrass him in front of his own family outside of the Mauville City Gym, I went inside to do the exact same thing to Watson. While Cubone was slowly proving that it may not be as reliable as I thought, it turns out it was still plenty good enough to absolutely demolish this gym and move right on. And with the third gym badge acquired, it was also time to head to the next hunt. I went across the entire top of the Hoenn region to get to Full Arbor Town and just passed it onto Route 114. And the water here was the home of our next redesigned shiny, Octillery. I wanted this hunt to feel as authentic as possible, so I added it as an encounter while using the Old Rod, since it's the only way you can get access to the water at this point. Since I wasn't super convinced the Old Rod was going to work consistently, this was the only hunt where I chose to make the target Pokemon the only spawn in the area. And starting this hunt, it was clear that it was a smart decision, as every couple of attempts I would get no bites or just miss the cue to hit the A button. But after about 20 minutes of fishing, the game made up for my last hunt.
Like, people say Aerodactyl's a really good shiny.
Oh my, speaking of good shinies, what?
Holy shit. What? Oh my god, speaking of banger shinies.
As you can probably tell by my reaction, I was both insanely shocked and so excited to find this Pokemon. To be honest, Octillery was one of the Pokemon I was most excited to see and use in this challenge, and I was just so happy with how well the redesign turned out. It had the perfect vibrant colors I was aiming for, and both the front and back of the sprite looked amazing in battle. And with this added to the team, I gained some valuable coverage with its water, ice, and psychic type moves. And with the fire gym on the horizon, it felt like there was no better time to add this to the team. From here, I was able to head down to Meteor Falls to watch Team Aqua harass a scientist before looping around back to Mauville City and up to the top of Mount Chimney. While up here, I decimated a few grunts and then headed into the Archie battle. And this is where I made a bit of an underestimation. I still have it ingrained in me that this battle features a Camerupt as the ace because I grew up playing only Pokemon Ruby instead of Sapphire, so I always just think that I have to get past the first two Pokemon before absolutely demolishing Camerupt with any type of water move.
For streams too. Oh, you have Sharpedo in this. That is... Yeah, I'm used to even having Camerupt, and this would be way easier to deal with.
But seeing as how Archie's ace is a Sharpedo that outspeeds my entire team, I needed a different approach. I tried this battle a few times and only managed to get to Sharpedo once, and even then it just instantly knocked out my weak remaining Pokemon. I decided it was time to go back and train my Pokemon up a bit more before returning to this battle. At this point, I had refined my strategy to using Natu as bait and using Leer as many times as I could to drop Mighty in as defense so Cubone could clean it up and then take as much health off of Golbat as possible before sending in Octillery to clean up. But still, this plan was coming up short, and similar to the May battle, I felt that there might only be one way forward, using Nightshade. While it didn't help me win on the first attempt, I did manage to get the move Bone Meringue on Cubone, which would hopefully help solve the problem I constantly ran into with Cubone's Bone Club missing due to its 70 base accuracy. I ran it back, and with Nightshade and a couple of clutch critical hits courtesy of Cubone, I managed to finally beat Archie and move forward with this challenge. But this wasn't the last hill I had to climb before the next hunt. Luckily, the next thing to do was take on the 4th gym, and with a ground and water type in the party, I wasn't all that concerned. I did use this as an opportunity to fight all the trainers inside the gym and gain some good XP, knowing that it would come in handy since there weren't any new trainers between here and Norman. And during this time, I got Natu to finally evolve into Xatu. Moving forward, I arrived at Flannery and managed to wipe her entire team with Octillery and grab the 4th badge. And from here, I managed my way back to the 5th gym to start my journey to beat Norman. And while I did manage to get past each trainer on my way to the gym leader, it was becoming clear that I might be wildly unprepared to take on this gym. Given my lack of super effective moves and the fact that my fully evolved Pokemon weren't really the best statistically, I was in for a tough fight. And for about 30 minutes, I struggled to make almost any progress. Despite trying to cheese my way through using Dig to take advantage of Slacking's Truant ability, it was not going well. Most times I couldn't even knock out his first Slacking before running out of power points for Dig, and my entire team could only take 2 or 3 hits max before being knocked out. After trying and failing for a while, I went back to train for a bit longer. For training, I decided to head back to the desert on Route 110 and started grinding for XP. And about 15 minutes in, I came across something pretty interesting. While I couldn't add this to my team, it was fun to catch and add to the box to reflect back on at the end of the challenge. But after a while longer, my Pokemon were a couple levels higher and I was ready to try the gym again. This time around, things went a lot smoother. I had finally thought of the idea of using Rock Smash to lower Slacking's defense, and between that and Dig, I was doing way more damage than last time. With that, I was able to take out the first Slacking, and with a combination of Xatu and Octillery, I was able to take out Vigoroth with a lucky critical hit. For the final Slacking, I was able to use Dig a couple of times, and then just Headbutt, and with Slacking's unknown disposition for using Focus Punch, I was able to slowly chip away at Slacking's health and take it down to get the 5th gym badge. This was a huge step forward for the challenge, gaining access to Surf in essentially the entire second half of the map. To close out that stream, I showed off a great teleport trick to save some time, and made my way up to the Weather Institute to continue the journey in the next stream. Picking back up, I demolished Team Aqua again and gave the same treatment to my rival, making my way through to Four Tree City. Despite being at the scene of the 6th gym, there was still a lot more to do. I continued on to meet Steven and grab the Devon Scope, clear out the Kecleon, and continue tearing down Route 120. I took advantage of this new group of trainers and used the opportunity to grab some XP, which felt much needed following the Norman fight. And with that out of my way, I could finally move on to the real goal, Mount Pyre. With a short surfing trip and a bit more story taken care of, I was finally at the scene of my next hunt, and this was the hunt I was looking forward to the most. Since seeing its shiny mega form, I've always wished that Game Freak would adjust Shiny Gengar to match its mega form, but alas, we're stuck with this. Luckily for me, in this challenge, anything is possible, and I was really looking forward to seeing what this hunt had in store for me. This hunt was a really nice balance, seeing some cool Mount Pyre Pokemon like Chimecho from time to time, but with primarily Gengar showing up, it felt like it should fly by. But with 3 hours of hunting down and nothing yet to shine, it looked as if I might have another Natu situation on my hands. Still, I kept looking, and one stream and about 5 hours total later, it was finally time to see this wonderful recreation. I don't want to do this anymore. He's like, no, don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. Don't quit the team. Oh my goodness. Shiny Gengar, chat. I was so happy with how this one turned out. I think a white Gengar looks incredible, and the blue accents and eyes went super well together. I wasn't able to add any gold to match the Mega's shiny perfectly, but I'm still super proud of this one and even more excited to have it on the team. Gengar is super good in Gen 3, and it learns a ton of different moves to help with coverage down the line. Unfortunately for me, Shockwave was not one of the TMs listed in its learn set, meaning my plan for the 6th gym would need some adjusting. With that decided, I trekked all the way back to Route 110 to complete the new Mauville quest to get Thunderbolt. While it did take a while to backtrack, it was well worth it as Gengar was able to wipe most of Winona's team before Octillery delivered the final hits to win the battle. With that done, I was 6 badges in and ready to knock out another huge chunk of the story. Little did I know just how big an effort getting the next shiny would be. But following the success of the 6th gym, it was time to take on a chunk of the story first. Starting in the Aqua hideout just outside of Lily Cove, I continued my domination of Team Aqua and most importantly grabbed the Master Ball to help with a later hunt. From there, I was able to make it over to Moss Deep City and continue my journey for all 8 gym badges. While I may have been pretty underleveled, I was super lucky and barely pulled off a win against Tate and Liza and grabbed my 7th badge. While I could continue on with the story a little bit more, I decided to pivot and start setting up for the next hunt. And the first order of business was to catch a Wailmer. While I saw online I could catch Wailmer as high as level 45, I couldn't find anything close to that no matter where I searched. After a while, I resorted to just catching a Wailmer at level 35 and grinding it the rest of the way up to level 40 to get a Wailord. And for that, I headed underwater to take on another task at the same time, finding Relicanth. And with that hint, you can probably start to see what I'm getting at. While I was happy to grind out some levels against a plethora of Clamperl and Chinchou at the bottom of the ocean, it took me over 40 minutes before I came across my first Relicanth, which is supposedly a 5% encounter. While this was pretty bad luck, it did mean that I was that much closer to leveling up my Wailmer, so there was at least one positive takeaway. From there, I decided to take on the final Aqua base located in the Seafloor Cavern. After all the grinding, my team was able to decimate all the grunts and Archie, closing out almost all of the Team Aqua storyline, and with Eternal Rain threatening to drown out the entire Hoenn region, I figured it would be the perfect time to take a good break and start on the next shiny hunt. I was able to use the XP from Team Aqua and a couple of rare candies to finally evolve Wailmer into Wailord, giving me access to all the tools I would need for the next hunt. Or so I thought. That poses a whole other problem, chat. With Relicanth and Wailord in the proper spots in the party, I dove down into the sealed chamber to decode the Reggie puzzle. And what did this Braille message have to say? Use Dig. The only problem is, remember that time when I needed Rock Tomb for the 6th gym? Yeah, well, I may have taught that move over Dig after using the only Dig TM in the entire game. I'm gonna go over Dig. I don't think I'm gonna need Dig. But does that mean the next hunt is impossible? No. It just makes things very, very difficult. Luckily for me though, there is one Pokemon that can learn Dig via level up. Trapinch. The catch is it learns this at level 41 and is in one of the worst XP groups in the entire game. But with no alternatives, it was time to face the consequences for my lack of preparation and research. On the bright side though, the first Trapinch I found was a shiny, so at least we got to look at something cool during all of this. After that, I grabbed a team of Zigzagoon with the pickup ability to round out my party for grinding so I could hopefully farm a couple of rare candies while working on this. I decided to go back and level up using the Gengar spawn on Mount Pyre as it gave by far the most XP out of anything on the map at this point. I had to use the EXP share for a while to help Trapinch get some levels, but once it learned Crunch, I was able to use that and some of the healing items to make it go a lot faster and bang out the remaining levels. And finally, 2 hours after attempting to open the Reggie chamber, I was finally able to return, use Dig, open the chamber, and finally get to the island cave, where I accidentally opened the chamber while attempting to decode the puzzle, but now I could look for the next team member, Regice. You might think that overcoming all of that would mean I can finally just relax and hunt, But of course, that would just be too simple. I spent the next stream just reset hunting for Regice, and while that was fine, I was a little worried about this taking forever. And the next stream after that, I came to a realization. I thought that reset hunting might not actually work because of the fact that the battery is dry on this copy of Sapphire. And sure enough, what did I find? But a dry battery messes with how the RNG works in this game and removes the game's ability to randomize static encounters just like Regice. While you can use some really advanced tricks to exploit this factor, I felt that there was a much better way to go about this. So after wasting about 4 hours of my life looking for a Regice that would literally never shine, it was time for a backup plan. I went into the game's files and added Regice encounter data to the entire island cave room, allowing me to just find Regice while running around the cave, rather than only having the static one available. And this way, I could shiny hunt for Regice with the original one still spectating. And of course, now that I had fixed that, it was time for the game to pay me back for my lost time.
Next time some crazy shit happens in game, you guys already called me out for cheating and making stuff up and hacking, so this is not going to help my case in the slightest. Had to reset my Wi-Fi, but I'm here. Welcome back. Oh my god! Oh, see, this is such bad timing for that. Oh, chat, nobody's gonna believe that this happened.
While the circumstances around finding this shiny seemed suspicious at best, I was excited that this insane trial of a shiny hunt was done and I could finally move to finishing up the story and working toward the 6th and final shiny hunt. The first order of business was to head to the abandoned ship to grab the TM for Ice Beam to teach to Regice. From there, I was able to fly back to Sutopola's city and enter the Cave of Origin to take on Kyogre. Though it would have been hilarious with 1 in 260 odds, it unfortunately wasn't shiny, and while it felt wrong, I decided to run from it to save time. I headed into the gym and took the opportunity to fight the insane amount of trainers that Wallace has trapped in the basement of his gym. And once that was done, it was time to take on Wallace and punish him for kidnapping all those innocent trainers. While I thought I could just breeze through this with Gengar's Thunderbolt, Whiscash managed to disprove that and showed me that some sort of alternative plan may be required. I remembered in this game you can grab the TM for Giga Drain, and after seeing that Gengar could also learn that, it seemed like a no-brainer. I thought this would be a simple operation, but similar to the Regice hunt, this was somehow going to take way longer than it needed to. I first went to go to talk with the NPC, but they didn't offer me the TM, so I thought I might be looking in the wrong area. From there, I did a bunch more searching, and it turns out that I just needed to grab a grass type. So I flew all the way back to Petalburg Woods, I grabbed a Shroomish, went all the way back to the NPC for a 3rd time, and was finally able to receive the TM for Giga Drain. While it was an absolute pain to get, it proved to be extremely worth it with Gengar soloing the entire 8th gym after all of that. With that, I could move on to the final leg of the challenge and the final shiny hunt. While the next hunt took place in Victory Road, I wanted to just get through it before I settled into the hunt. So I took some time to slowly destroy the hopes and dreams of every trainer on their way to the Elite Four, and most importantly, taught Wally a lesson once and for all. And with that done, it was time to take on the last shiny hunt. And I would argue I saved the best, or in this case the worst, for last. Dragonite. I have a vendetta against Game Freak for creating this awful creature and ruining what could have been the magnum opus of a wonderful line of shiny Pokemon. But of course, they've left it up to me to clean up their mess. So I spent some time running around in Victory Road looking for the new and improved version of Dragonite that I had designed. But just as I suspected following the quick Regice hunt, we were in for a long one. I spent the final 2 hours of stream that day just running up and down the final stretch looking for shiny Dragonite, but also using it as an opportunity to level up my team. While I did have a pretty stacked team of Pokemon and adding Dragonite was only going to make it better, they were criminally under-leveled and there was no shot I'd be able to beat the Elite Four with them in their current state. It was pretty easy to knock them out using Regice and Octillery, but it was still a bit of a grind. I came back the next day, refreshed, ready to finish leveling, and then hopefully finding Dragonite and closing out this challenge. While things didn't go exactly in that order, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
Fighting weaker wild Pokemon will yield you oh my god! There it is! Oh my god! I was just talking about this. What the hell? Oh my goodness, chat. That is it. That is our final shiny Pokemon of this challenge. I was finally able to restore Dragonite to its true form. A beautiful pink and gold shiny that follows the design of its shiny predecessors. And while it might look a little bit like Barney, it was certainly better than whatever the hell they were going for when they made this.
But with it caught, I now had the 6th and final member of the team, and all that stood between me and becoming the Pokemon League champion was a bit of leveling up. And over the course of the next hour, I destroyed every other victory mode Pokemon in sight, and with a team of level 50 Pokemon, it was time to complete the final step of this challenge. Starting with Sydney, Dragonite was my lead and able to grab a couple of easy knockouts before falling to his Sharpedo, but from there, Gengar and Redesigned were able to take down his 3 remaining Pokemon and check off the first of this Elite 4. Coming up next was Phoebe, and while I assumed that Gengar would just carry with Shadow Ball, this battle turned out to be a whole team effort. Gengar got a couple of knockouts, but it also took Dragonite, Octillery, and eventually Redesigned to put the rest of her team back in the grave once and for all. Glacia's team ended up being another one that troubled me more than I thought it would. Redesigned was actually able to put in quite a bit of work with Superpower and Zap Cannon, but eventually the lack of accuracy caught up with me. Gengar's Thunderbolt was incredibly helpful and eventually sealed the victory, but not before losing Xatu and Octillery as well during this one. It didn't matter a ton, but with battles like this, I was quickly burning through the pretty limited supply of healing items I had purchased for this run. But with Drake coming up and both Redesigned and Octillery possessing strong Ice-type moves, I figured we might have a better battle coming up. And I could not have been more right. 5 Ice Beams later, Drake's entire team had been frozen and defeated while barely even taking any damage. This was exactly the boost I needed before heading into Steven. Steven Stone is one of my favorite trainers in all of Pokemon, and I couldn't think of a better way to end out this challenge. Now bring it! Alright, Steven, you asked for it. Let's do it. Here we go, chat. Our team, we've come this far. 6 shiny hunts later, we're ready. I started off the battle with Gengar and managed to take out Skarmory, but not before it could set up spikes, which would make swapping for ideal matchups a little more difficult. From there, I swapped into Octillery for Claydol, but I gave it enough turns to set up both Reflect and Light Screen, absolutely walling several of the stronger moves I planned on using. I did manage to get a lucky critical hit to clear out Claydol, and hit a solid Surf on Aggron before Octillery was knocked out. Luckily, Dragonite's Flying type allows it to avoid the spikes, and was able to hit another Surf to wipe out Aggron. Next up was Credilli, a Pokemon that had given me trouble in this battle since I could remember playing Pokemon Ruby for the first time. I managed to get a strong Ice Beam off with Redesigned before getting knocked out, but without any Ice-type moves on my remaining Pokemon, I was starting to panic a little bit. I only had half of my team remaining, and Steven still had some of his best team members left. I decided to use Gengar and just go for a stab Shadow Ball, which came up just short of knocking Credilli out. This gave it the chance to heal, leaving me to just spam Shadow Ball, hoping for special defense drops and praying Gengar could hang in there long enough to see this one through. Gengar failed to knock it out again, and with another full store reused, I was starting to lose hope. But somehow Dragonite managed to 2-shot Credilli with Dragon Claw, just barely leaving the door open for victory. I managed to knock out Armaldo as well, but not before taking a ton of damage from its ancient power. Now it was just Metagross remaining. Dragonite got a huge critical hit Surf, bringing it right to about half health, but eventually succumbed to his Psychic. This left only one member of my team remaining, Marowak. It comes back to the very beginning. T-Bone, I forgot to give it the soft sand. If there were ever a moment, I have said all challenge, T-Bone has had some of the most clutch moments when we've needed them. And if there was ever a time where we've needed it the most, this is it. We need one Earthquake. I think Metagross outspeeds. We have to live a Meteor Mash, which is gonna hurt a lot. T-Bone lives. Returns fire with an Earthquake, chat. Come on. And T-Bone clutches. Let's go. And with that, oh my goodness, it clutches out. With that, chat, we have defeated Champion Steven with our team of redesigned shiny Pokemon. Looking back, I really couldn't have asked for a more poetic ending to such an incredible challenge. This one encompassed so many things that I enjoy, from shiny hunting to collaborating with my chat and getting to experience some of my favorite old Pokemon games with a new interesting twist. I want to thank you all for watching and give a huge shout out to those who helped and watched live, which you can do over on my Twitch channel at I'mJamesLive_, which is also linked in the description. If you enjoyed this challenge, I'm sure you'll like the other videos I have planned for this channel, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. Again, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you all enjoyed this challenge and video as much as I did. did. Be sure to let me know what you thought of this video in the comments and drop a like if you enjoyed, as it really helps this video get out there on YouTube. I want to take a moment again to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.